Seamoose is a 1976 Marine Trader double cabin. Seamoose was featured in The Adventures of Yorksey and Me on YouTube. Seamoose has had the same owner since 2001. It had a full restoration, which lasted 11 years. The restoration is documented on the YouTube channel, The Adventures of Yorksey and Me, entitled How to Restore a Trawler for the Great Loop. Seamoose completed the Great Loop in October of 2023. Over $200,000 was invested in Seamoose over the last 24 years. This does not include ownership cost, slip rental, insurance, or any regular expense that you would incur for owning a boat. Seamoose is highly customized for efficient, comfortable coastal cruising. If you're familiar with the Marine Trader 34 double cabin, the most popular double cabin trawler ever built, you have never seen one like this. Seamoose is significantly structurally stronger and better equipped than any Marine Trader 34 you're likely to find. Along with the boat comes a lifetime collection of spare parts, including marine-grade hoses, rope, line, electrical parts, extra pieces, additional customization projects, spare macerator pump, seacocks, bronze fittings, everything you can imagine. It also includes a deeded 45-foot boat slip on Lake Erie at a very low-cost, DIY-friendly, locally owned marina. The cost of the boat slip per year is $1,200, and inside cold storage is around another $1,000. So you're looking at $2,200 a year to dock and store the boat, which is an outstanding value when you compare that to other marinas around the country. Seamoose's owner is willing to train the new operator. Depending on where you're located, the owner is willing to deliver the boat with U.S. crew, so by the time you get to your home marina, you will be fully skilled and ready to go cruising. Recent additions to Seamoose include a fresh bottom job with a re-glassed keel and skeg in 2022. This was a complete strip and peel of the bottom and an application of a new bottom, and a re-glassing of the keel from stem to stern and the skeg. This involved 2 coats of Interlux 2-part undercoat and 2 coats of bottom paint on top of that, and then the boot stripe and the hull was painted with 4 coats of Interlux Bright Side enamel, and when we returned from the Great Loop, an additional coat of Interlux Bright Side was put on the hull. It has a new heat exchanger, new intercoolers, a new exhaust elbow, all new cooling hoses, and the water injector. This was done in 2023 at a cost of $3,000. It has a new transmission in 2023 for a cost of $6,000. The transmission includes a custom coupling. If you're familiar with Lehman 120s and Paragons, you know that there's a special version of the Paragon transmission that only works with the Lehman, and those are getting harder and harder to find. The custom coupling enables a non-Lehman Paragon transmission to work on the engine. The aft coupling in the reduction unit is one of the last 2 brand new aft couplings known to exist that was machined by Federal Marine in Chicago. There are no more new aft couplings, so that transmission should last you a very, very long time. It has a Vetus bow thruster and controller that was installed in 2022 at a cost of $7,000. It has a state-of-the-art Garmin 12-inch chart plotter with 30-mile radar that was installed in 2021 at a cost of $6,000. It has a NEMA 2000 network that includes an Airmar depth transducer, the chart plotter, and an AIS receiver that was installed in 2021. It has dual VHF radios. There is a top-of-the-line ICOM VHF and a Garmin VHF that includes an integrated AIS receiver, both with separate antennas and all-new coax at a cost of $2,000. It has a custom aluminum arch which allows CMOOS to fit under the lowest bridge on the Great Loop. This arch was custom fabricated and installed in 2021 at a cost of $1,500. It has a custom teak helm seat and a stunning teak dinette table, which was built in 2020 by Robert Smith, who is one of the best custom cabinetry people that you're going to find on the Great Lakes, at a cost of $2,500. It has a 3.5 kilowatt phaser generator with 271 hours that was installed at 2020, and that was done at a cost of $5,000. In 2022, a new Webasto marine air heat unit was installed in preparation for the Great Loop at a cost of $1,500, including the Webasto unit, a brand new Iwaki pump, all new hoses, strainers, and filters, so the entire system was replaced. It has a Lumar windlass with an oversized Rockna anchor and 96 feet of heavy chain, all of which was installed in preparation for the Loop in 2022 at a cost of $2,000. It has a Balmar 100 amp smart alternator, which was installed in 2022 at the cost of $1,000. A lot of new equipment was purchased just before the boat left for the Loop in 2022, making CMOOS a perfect cruising boat to do the Loop again. What follows is a feature video presentation which covers the exterior of the boat, the engine room, and the interior of the boat. At the end of the video presentation will be the asking price, items that the owner would consider taking in trade, and delivery considerations. Enjoy.
Up here on the flybridge, you have storage cabinets underneath. You have a nice AM/FM stereo that's wired in with the Sea-Watch amplified antenna, obviously a wheel. This little thing that's covered in plastic used to contain a VHF radio, and I was always going to do something with that, but I never did, so you could take the plastic off and mount things in there. Full instrumentation up here and a manual compass. There's a digital compass down below. The windshield is brand new. This was put on just before we did the Loop. And you get a great sight line from up here, although I generally ran the boat from the lower station. There are a set of cushions up here that are currently stored in the cabinet. They're not in the best of shape, but they are serviceable. Here we have the boat's garage. This is a full-size Taylor fiberglass locker that locks, and it's big enough for a lot of stuff: an outboard motor, hoses, shore power cords, and so forth. There are mounts to store these 4 big Taylor fenders on either side of the flybridge. We kept a couple of garlic chairs up here, so it was a great place to sit and watch the sunset. This arch is custom fabricated by a shop in Michigan. It was about $700 to have this made. And we have our Garmin 24-mile radar and our anchor light, and also our stern running light is on the back of this. The beauty of this arch is that it keeps you under the bridge in Chicago, and we have twin VHF antennas on either side. One of them is VHF and AIS, and one of them is VHF. And then over on this side we have our amplified AM/FM antenna, which is also connected to the TV. Sitting on the aft rail and looking forward, we can see the custom rack that I built that will hold 3 5-gallon jugs. The 2 water jugs and the gas jug do not come with the boat. And then here you see where the flag goes. Looking up on the arch, you can see the VHF antenna. There's 2 very bright LED lights that are wired with a very thick gauge wire, so you can leave those on all night. And there's a backup camera, a Garmin camera, directly underneath the Garmin radar. That allows you to get a beautiful view on the back of the boat from the lower station, and then the light on the other side. Coming down, you see the aft windows to the salon. That mounting pin is where the original mast was located, which I removed so that I'd be able to get into Chicago and fit under the bridge. This cute little door here takes you into the aft cabin, and it also slides open, and there's a custom screen that was fabricated so that you can leave the hatch open and screen it. And with the hatch screened, then you get airflow from the hatch all the way back through the boat. When you're at anchor, it works out very well. Back here on the aft deck, we have the fills for the water tanks. There are two 75-gallon stainless steel water tanks, one on either side, and then underneath this lazarette hatch is where you access the steering quadrant and the rudder panel. This hatch should definitely be sanded and refinished soon. I coated it with West epoxy and enamel, and it's obviously getting a little worn. These two little hooks back here are what we used to attach additional jerry cans of fuel. It has the ubiquitous Weber barbecue grill. This is the third one that's been on the boat because they do eventually rust out. And then back here, you've got a nice swim step and a swim ladder. One of the things about these boats that makes them so appealing for the loop is the walk around decks. So if you have a need to grab a bollard or dock on either side of the boat, you can walk clear around the boat without having to climb or hang on something or do anything. Those two fills that you see are for the two port side diesel tanks. There are 4 tanks on the boat, 2 on each side. The forward deck has been covered with AstroTurf, so the dog has a place to do her business. And what we would do is we would use this saltwater washdown right here to clean the deck, pour a little boat soap on and wash it down so that it didn't become offensive. And in a seaway, this actually proves to have really, really good traction. Up here on the front of the boat, we have a Lewmar 1500 windlass and a Rockna anchor. The Rockna anchor is very much oversized for the boat, and we have 90 feet of extremely beefy, very heavy chain. I've got another about 60 feet of rope rode back at the house, which will come with the boat. So looking at the front of the boat from the flybridge, you can see the windshield and the bimini top. The bimini top's about 6 years old. It's still in really good shape. These front windows are coated with 4 coats of West System clear epoxy and about 15 coats of varnish. So they present very well. They get maintenance coats of varnish every year. Now what you see for the forward house is entirely reconstructed. The entire forward house was rebuilt from scratch because it was so full of rot, and I put a modern hatch here. It makes a really nice place to lay down and to relax and sunbathe. Of course, if you watch my restoration video, you know that all the decks were completely recored. When the boat was recored, the fiberglass was run from the top of the rub rail down over the decks and back up all the way to the side of the house. So after I recored the decks and put the old glass on, I covered the decks with 18-ounce cloth from the bow all the way to the stern, and then I took 6-ounce cloth and took it from the rub rail all the way to the top of the house. So quite literally, the boat is a new shell of glass on top of the old and should last a very, very long time. The hull was completely sanded down and repainted with 2 coats of 2-part epoxy primer and 4 coats of Interlux Brightside enamel before we left on the loop. And when we came back from the loop, we gave it a light sanding and another coat of Interlux. If you get up close, you can definitely see some spots where we scraped docks and did other things, really surface imperfections, but from the all-important 10 feet away, it looks great. The railings, rub railing, the grab rail have been freshly varnished. All the window frames have been freshly varnished. The grab rails back here are freshly varnished. You do have to keep up with it. If you let it go, it's a lot of work to bring it back. But if you put a couple coats of varnish on it every year, it continues to look beautiful and will give you many, many years of pleasure. I think she has very fine lines. There's a lot of room on this boat for a 34-footer, and there's a lot of living space. We would sit up on the flybridge, sunbathe on the aft deck and the forward deck, and obviously our little dog loved the walk around decks. She would run around in circles. So starting from the starboard forward side of the engine room, this is a next gen, also sold as a phaser, 3.5 kilowatt marine diesel generator. This unit has about 250 hours on it. I bought it with about 100 hours on it, and we didn't really use it that much on the loop. The only thing you need to know about this generator is you must service the water pump impeller every 200 hours, because the water pump is very, very small, and the impeller will shredderate and it will become very hot and shut itself down. So down underneath the generator we have two strainers, and of course the Airtex NEMA 2000 depth sounder. So this strainer is for the air conditioning system, and it runs to the recirc pump here, which is a really high-end recirc pump. And this strainer over here, which you probably can't see, is for the generator, and they both have shut-off seacocks underneath. The generator has a fan that will pull out of the sand enclosure if it becomes too hot. So moving our way down the starboard side of the boat, this is the lift muffler for the generator. Back there is a 110 volt bathroom fan, and I leave that running the whole time that the boat is at the slip, because it pulls out all of the stale air in the engine room and keeps the boat nice and fresh. I do have a very high power engine room ventilator that you could easily replace that with, which would be good when you get down in the tropics. This 800 watt inverter is set up to run the refrigerator, and there's a switch up in the salon that switches between shore power and the inverter. This inverter went out about halfway through the loop, and the refrigerator is currently plugged into the Xantrex on the other side of the boat. You can replace this inverter for about 300 bucks. If you want to have two inverters for backup, you definitely do that. Here we see the two tanks on this side. The inboard tank is 27 gallons and the outboard tank is 25 gallons. That may not seem like a lot of fuel, but we never had a problem on the loop. The beauty of it is the original tanks came right here, so you have a tremendous amount of room down here that you wouldn't have otherwise. On the motor is a 100 amp Balmar Smart alternator. This alternator is top of the line. You see a lot of cruising sailboats with this. It puts out a full 100 amps, and the Smart controller, which is back behind me, will charge the engine batteries and then the house batteries to top and then back off. And this is an absolute necessity. Another thing that's done on this that's custom is this is the circulation loop for the hot water heater. So the engine coolant keeps the hot water heater hot, and this allows you to shut it off real quick if there's an issue, because these lines are very, very long and go all the way around the engine. So back here in the far starboard aft end, you have the two start batteries. These are bigger than Group 31s, and the charger for this is on the other side inside that cabinet in the aft cabin, which is right behind. You've got the lift muffler here. This lift muffler was taken out, serviced, cleaned, and repainted. There is a practically brand new transmission sitting back here, which you probably can't see, but it's a beautiful thing, and spent many, many thousands of dollars on it. It's got a brand new heat exchanger. It's got all brand new hoses. This starter may very well be the original, and it still works absolutely beautifully. It's also got a new manifold and a new water injector. So now, starting on the port side, you see the hot water heater. That went out about 2/3 of the way through the loop and got replaced. I can't remember exactly where. The black tank is the accumulator tank, which makes the pump cycle a little bit less, and then that feeds into a residential water filter that I put in, and then the water pump is really easy to get to. It's down on that little platform, and if you've ever owned a boat, you know that these water pumps have a very short half-life. This space was converted to store oil, antifreeze, and bilge fluid, and then right behind that is the main strainer for the engine. Underneath me is the bilge. There used to be a holding tank here, and that was removed, and that makes the bilge extremely large and easy to get to. The bilge is painted and very clean. I'll show it to you in a minute. And there are two bilge pumps, one fairly high capacity and a backup pump, and then there's a manual pump if, heaven forbid, you lose both bilge pumps. This boat has an amazingly clean bilge. We've been in the water for several days, and it's basically seawater. So you've got the big bilge pump in the white and the little bilge pump in the red, and then the black hose that you see is the manual bilge. So moving down the port side of the boat, we have the same fuel setup that we have on the other side. You'll notice that I staggered the fuel tanks. The fuel tanks on the starboard side are towards the rear, and on the port side they're towards the front, so we get an even balance. So you've got a 25-gallon plastic tank and then a 27-gallon tank behind it, and the tanks are very well cribbed and secured, and we had this boat in many extremely rough seas, and these tanks did not move. You can see the coolant recovery tank for the Lehman right there. And then over here on this side, which I know you can't see, the Jabsco water pump for the raw water cooling system for the Lehman was replaced about 4 years ago. And of course it's got a brand new impeller, and both intercoolers were replaced when we redid the heat exchanger, which would have been about 2/3 of the way through the loop. I'm in the process of painting the engine. I don't know if I'll finish that. It's a big job, but most of the areas with rust have gotten at least one coat of paint. These things are pretty solid. On the Sims injection pump, and I'm sure you can't see this, but you'll have to take my word for it. Instead of the drain plug that you normally have, there's a little valve that opens and closes, so you have no danger of stripping that little screw. What happens on these is the level check screw and the drain screw get stripped because this is an aluminum body. So even if you don't buy my boat, if you buy one of these, look out for that, because this is the most expensive part of the motor, is this mechanical fuel pump. Okay, so you're looking at the intake side of the fuel management system. The diagram tells you what position to set the switches in to pick the tank that you want to pull fuel from. When you see the return manifold, it's completely different. And the reason that you see this extra board bolted here is the intake manifold, which I had custom built, sprung a leak, and I replaced it with these Moeller valves. And it's so easy to make a mistake with this that I have a valve laying here so you can remind yourself which position of the valve moves fuel where. To the right of that, you see the Racor fuel water separator, which has a pressure gauge on it. I replaced the mechanical fuel pump on the Lehman with a Walbro FRB9, which is good for 10,000 hours. What's really sweet about this system is if you look over here on the return manifold, there is a bypass valve. And so you can bypass the engine. You can also touch the engine off with these two valves, and you can use this pump to transfer fuel from one tank to the other, or to polish the fuel in the tanks. Now, this is not a commercial fuel polishing system by any means, but when we were on the loop, we used to use this to move fuel into the port outside tank. The port outside tank is what the generator is plumbed to. So generally, I don't run the engine from that tank because the generator fuel return is so ferocious that the engine, it'll push it back into the engine return. So generally, I just run the generator off of that tank, and when that tank gets low and you haven't gotten fuel for a while, you can use this to pull that tank out. Moving to the corner over here, the pump that you see down on the floor is the pump for the shower in the aft head, and it has a filter strainer on it which you can clean out when it gets clogged with shower gunk. The switch for that is in the shower itself. And then here we have a Xantrex Freedom 1000 inverter. This is wired to the plug in the aft cabin, so the media center and the television set are off the inverter, and because the other inverter went out on the loop, this terribly plumbed extension cord is how I run the refrigerator when we're underway. This is part of the house bank inside this box. There are two deep cycle 1200 amp hour batteries in the box, and there's another two batteries directly above this in the cabinet next to the settee. What you're seeing here is part of the steering system. The shaft runs back from the electrical locker and goes to another shaft up there. It's a jack shaft technically, which then goes back and runs the steering quadrant. Last but not least, this little switch right here, tells the fuel pump to run off the ignition or in transfer mode. So you don't have to turn the key on to run the pump to transfer fuel. So we have this storage cabinet down in the engine room, and this is really handy. You can't probably see in here, but it's pretty good size, and I've got spare filters and tools and oil filter change wrench and stuff like that, things that you would need when doing maintenance on this side of the engine. That was done on purpose on the fuel tank shelf, so you'd have a little extra storage down here. So that concludes our engine room tour. If you've seen the engine room of other marine traders, this is quite a treat. There's a lot of custom stuff down here, and I spent a long time building everything that you see and cutting all of these boards and getting all of this built. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. So this is the forward cabin of Sea Moose, and during the reconstruction prior to the loop, basically everything forward of these bulkheads was completely torn off and rebuilt and built new. So the walls, the ceiling, the fiberglass, all of it is brand new construction. This has also been modified. This is the normal piece that came from the factory that would sit here to turn this into a bed. We custom made this larger piece, which makes this actually quite comfortable, and it's just big enough that you can open this door and have room to open it. The two of us were able to sleep up here very, very comfortably. The original ship's electrical panel from 1975 is fairly old, and I was concerned that it wouldn't deliver the right amount of power to the electronics and the critical systems of the boat. So what I did is I built a secondary electrical panel back here. The wiring is behind this in the closet, as you'll see in a minute. So there's 8-gauge wire run to both batteries, which goes into this switch, which allows you to run this panel off of the house bank, the start bank, or both at once. So this drives the chart plotter, the radar, the compass, the VHF, and the secondary VHF, which is AIS. These monitor the battery voltage. This is bank 1, this is bank 2. Sea Moose has two 30-amp connectors for shore power and a generator. So what this does is it allows you to either run the boat off of one 30-amp plug or the generator, or run it off of 2 plugs. And when you run it off of 2 plugs, that gives you bus 2, which is this 30-amp breaker, which is wired straight to the air conditioner. That way you don't put a heavy load on the ship's power when you're running the air conditioner. So essentially this is saying right now that the air conditioner is hooked to bus 1, and if you put this in generator, then bus 1 and bus 2 are on the generator, and if you put this to shore 2, the air conditioner is on the secondary shore panel, and this controls the generator switch. So you have a lot of flexibility about how you're going to power the boat and how the power is going to work. This is a carbon monoxide detector, obviously a double duplex 110 on shore power. So when I rebuilt this, I put this oak beadboard on the walls and bent it to fit. This is an original piece. This is new, and this is actually soffit material for a house that makes a very nice ceiling and ventilates. I also put 2 inches of foam insulation in the roof so that it doesn't get so hot. And then if you look along here, these cabinets are cedar lined, and here's one of the vents for the air conditioner. The original design of the boat had a head forward and a head aft. I didn't really need 2 heads, and when you're on the loop, you're going to need a lot of storage space. So we converted this forward head into a multi-purpose storage closet. So it's been cedar lined, which keeps your clothes nice and dry and smelling nice. This shelf comes out if you want to, but it allows you to make a 2-level storage system. Underneath there is a washdown pump, so you can clean off your anchor and wash down the decks. And this is wired for a 12-volt cooler. So we kept a 12-volt cooler down here, and we used the enormous shelf in there that you can just barely see to store our vegetables and potatoes and things of that nature that didn't need refrigeration. A couple of Sterlite container stacked on that side holds an amazing amount of supplies, and then this leaves you a nice big closet, so you have lots of room for hanging clothes. This small television is connected to the ship's outside antenna and amplifier. That would be the anchor locker. We have 90 feet of 5/8 chain. That may not sound like a lot, but 5/8 chain is suitable for a 50-foot boat, so that chain holds it very, very well. What you're seeing here in the shadow is the circuit breaker for the bow thruster so that you don't overload it. And then here up on the ceiling, you've got a brand new Lumar hatch, which is also screened. So it gives you a really nice ventilation with the hatch open and the screen on the aft door back there. It makes a nice airflow through the boat. And last but not least, this light is both a night light and a regular light. This hanging locker is where we stored all of our foul weather gear. And there's several critical systems in here. This box up against the wall protects all of this wiring, and this is where the NEMA 2000 bus is connected up and terminated. There's a battery charger here which is dedicated to the battery, which is for the windlass and the bow thruster. And then you can see the vent for the air conditioning, and the ship's main electrical panel is back here. The ship's electrical panel has been significantly cleaned up from what it was when I bought the boat, and there's a whole lot of new wiring in here. The new owner, I will be happy to walk them through this and show them where the circuits are and how everything works. CMOOS is powered by a chain drive system. The chain drive for the pilot house is here, and for the forward station, and then there's a shaft that runs back. It's very old school and very reliable. We didn't have any problems with it. The sole in the V-berth had a little bit of rot in it, and so it's been completely replaced with a brand new sheet of 3/4 inch marine plywood cut to fit, and of course covered with this beautiful red carpet and padding. Over here on both sides, you have two small drawers for small items, and then you have the locker underneath, which runs all the way forward. And under here is where the bow thruster is located. It's a Vetus bow thruster that we'll look at from the other side. And from here you can get a really nice look at the cedar that I used to line the sides of the shelf with. This is the aft cabin of CMOOS, and it is absolutely enormous and very comfortable. These doors lead to the aft deck. This hatch slides back, and we have a screen that snaps into this with the hatch open, and that allows you to open the forward hatch and leave this screen here and get a nice breeze through the boat when you're at anchor. Over on this side is a single berth, not really all that comfortable to sleep in, so we used it for storage. We had 3 large Rubbermaid storage containers that we held in with a tie-down strap. I'll show you that in a minute. On this side is a full-size bunk that's just a little bit smaller than a twin bed. 2 people can sleep in it if they're really, really friendly, but it's very, very comfortable for 1 person. And then here's the head, which I'll show you in a minute. Here we have drawers that are quite large. This is where I kept socks and t-shirts. The floor was completely torn out and rebuilt, and underneath the floor is concrete that they used to seal the ballast. That concrete was refreshed and then painted with 2 coats of Kills so that it wouldn't become smelly when it got wet. Down here we have an enormous shoe locker. This goes all the way back to that aft bulkhead, and you can put 15 pairs of shoes in here, no problem. So I'm 6 feet 2 inches tall, and I have room to wiggle my feet, and I got room for my head, but this is right in front of my face. But this bunk is definitely big enough to sleep in, and I have slept in it before. And if you're in a really rolly anchorage, it's kind of nice because you got this wall to brace up against. We have this enormous locker. This locker contains the air conditioning system. So this is the main return. This is a Webasto 16,000 BTU. It's also a heat pump that heats and cools, and the ducting runs up underneath the decks and all around the boat. And what you can do with this is, by controlling which ducts are open and closed, you can focus the air conditioning on the salon, or in the salon on the forward cabin, or just in the aft cabin. For example, when you're sleeping at night, you can just keep this cabin cool. The thermostat for it is right here. So here we have a carbon monoxide smoke detector, a quad duplex, which is really convenient for charging things and putting them up on this shelf. These lights are actually under cabinet lights, and they're dimmable. And here we have a dual USB-C and USB-A charging port. Just about anywhere you sit down on the boat, there's a place to charge your laptop or your phone. Now back here in the aft cabin, we have blackout blinds. And these blackout blinds completely black it out here. So if you're sleeping during the day because you're running 4-hour watches, when these things are down, there's no light. Up here is a shelf which you can store a lot of stuff on, and the 3 hooks that you see up there allow you to run a cargo net from there down to here, so that you can pile this as high as you possibly can with stuff and keep it from moving in a seaway. Up here are towel racks, and you can hang 2 full-size bath towels, one on each one, and that allows you to dry the towels without leaving them in the head. Over here in the corner, we have another hanging locker. And what you see inside there is the battery charger for the engine bank. It's located close to the engine bank so that the wiring is very short. And underneath there is the air conditioning duct that runs back into the main part of the boat. This is a pretty good sized locker. I kept all my clothes here, and Dorina kept all her clothes in the front, and we had lots and lots of room. Over here is the privacy door for the aft cabin. So slide this and you close this, and you have the cabin all to yourself. And if you're running the boat and sleeping back here, you don't have any noise or anything coming from the pilot house. Down here in the steps, you have enormous storage spaces. And this is also how you get to the stuffing box. These steps basically pull out. You lift up the floor, and the stuffing box is right there, and it has very, very easy access. This switch allows you to completely disconnect the start bank from the boat. And when you're anchoring, this gives you the peace of mind that if you run the number 2 bank completely dead, you'll still be able to start the boat, because it has a hard disconnect, and there's no way that the battery can discharge even if you put the switch in the wrong position. It's a nice little safety feature. Over here on the other side of the aft cabin, we have the space underneath the bunk. This first space contains the holding tank. Seamoose has a 30-gallon holding tank, which was enormous for a boat this size. And even though the thought of sleeping on top of the holding tank might be worrisome, it's dual vented. There's a vent on both sides so air can flow through it. And what this means is the line from the head to the holding tank is about that long. So when you flush the toilet, it makes it all the way into the tank. Over on this side is an enormous locker that goes all the way back underneath the bunk this way and all the way back this way. We had a set of Sterlite containers that fit in there like a Rubik's Cube, and a scuba tank and a brownie setup, and they all fit under there easily. I had 4 small Sterlite containers the size of the door so I could slide them out, and that's where I kept shirts, pants, and clothes dry while I was on the boat. This bunk, which has a custom 8-inch foam mattress, is extremely comfortable and nice and firm, and you have this lovely reading light, and you get an amazing view of the TV. It's like watching a movie screen. So we have a 32-inch HD TV here, which is connected to the boat antenna up on the flybridge, and it's absolutely huge when you're in here at night. And then under here, we have the boat's media server. This is a Dell desktop PC with 4 gigabytes of memory, and this is a 4 terabyte hard drive, and it's all attached into this little custom tray so that it can't slide around. The plug that's inside this cabinet is connected to the Freedom 1000 inverter, so when you're at anchor and on battery power, you can run the media server and the television, and you can watch movies. There are approximately 3,000 movies on that hard drive, so you can cruise a long time and still have something to watch. There's room in the bottom of this cabinet for additional storage, and then you've got a nice drawer here, which is like your bedside drawer where you can keep all kinds of odds and ends, and another shelf that you can use to store your devices or put a clock on there or whatever. When we ran the boat, we had the Starlink Wi-Fi router right here attached with Tyra. This is the main head on Sea Moose, and everyone that comes on board this boat cannot believe how large this head is. I mean, there's room to walk around in here. It features a Raritan Marine Elegance head. It's about $1,000 head. It's the finest marine head that money can buy, and the boat comes with a spare macerator pump, which is a good idea when you only have one head on the boat. So here we have a sink and a wand shower with a separate set of controls. There's a nice medicine cabinet in here, which is a pretty good size. And then we've got a couple of towel racks over on this side. The bottom has a teak grate and a shower drain, and this turns the pump on and off. So you shower until it's about half full, and then you pull this switch and the pump runs and pushes it overboard. And then we've got a nice shower curtain to keep the door from getting wet when you shower. This is a very comfortable head. There's a 5-gallon water heater, and there's 2 75-gallon water tanks underneath the lazarette and the aft deck. So with 150 gallons of water, we could both shower and run on those water tanks for 4 or 5 days before even starting to get worried about running out of water. Speaking from someone who lived on the boat for almost 400 days, the toilet is very comfortable to sit on. And here you can see the medicine cabinet and the mirror. The floor of the head was completely re-glassed and then coated with several coats of paint, so that should be good for many, many, many years. So starting in the main salon, we're going to tour it from the starboard side to the port side. So here we're looking at the back corner. This is another one of those under counter lights that's dimmable. And this is really nice on low at night when you leave the boat at the dock. It kind of keeps it softly illuminated inside, but not so bright. Got a 110 plug back there. That's one of the speakers for the Fusion stereo. And then we've got a nice rod holder that sits right above the dinette. The dinette is extremely comfortable. We're going to show you this table in just a minute, and you'll see how this works. With the table folded closed, this is exactly big enough for a laptop, and because of the fiddles on the table, the laptop won't slide off the table, which is really handy. Underneath this side of the settee, on this side, you have 2 more house batteries. Sea Moose has 4 12-volt batteries in the house bank. This is an air conditioning duct. This is the Freedom 1000 inverter control panel, which gives you the status of the system. Right now it's in top-off charge. As is typical with Sea Moose, anywhere you sit down you can plug in a laptop. So we've got 2 USB ports here. And then we've got a cigarette lighter plug port here, so you can plug in a spotlight or another little adapter to plug in laptops. Here we have a bus heater. So the heat from the engine is routed through coolant hoses with cutoff switches in the engine room up to underneath this cabinet, and there's a 12-volt heater that draws air in through this vent and then blows out hot air here. And on a very cold day, on the water with the engine running, it gets really toasty in here. It takes a little while because it's just a small heater, but it gets really toasty and it works really well. The dinette table that came from the factory was a huge affair that went all the way to here. And of course, the reason they did that was to claim that the boat would sleep 6 people, 6 very tiny people. So we've built this custom cabinet here that we'll show you in a minute. This table was built by Robert Jensen. He is a extremely famous woodworker here in Ohio. So this is the table folded closed. This is the table folded open. So this is teak with teak trim, and the woodworking and the quality of the work on this table is absolutely beautiful. It's one of my favorite pieces. In this corner, we have a very nice settee and the speaker for the Fusion stereo, and a nice little shelf back here. All of the blinds on the boat were brand new. They were purchased just before we went on the loop. Now, what's not obvious here is there are 2 recliners built into the boat. Over on that side, because of the angle of the custom helm seat, you can recline, and it's just big enough to stretch out. And over here, this has a nice recliner angle too. So when you're sitting in a rolly anchorage, you can recline here and the first mate can recline there, or vice versa. And then for extra comfort, we've got a cup holder right here. So your coffee cup is right at arm's reach when you're reclining, and it won't fall over in the anchorage. Under here, we have the main set of kitchen lockers. Now, these are very long cabinets, which are very difficult to use. So I found these plastic containers. These are designed to go in a catering tray, you know, a catering buffet, and hold cold salads. But they make for really convenient drawers, and they fit beautifully. So we have all of our dishes down here, and we have all of our pots and pans and cooking equipment, and they're extremely easy and fast to get to. Over on this side, forward of the settee, we have this beautiful piece of teak custom cabinetry. There's a really nice small cubby in here, which is where we kept wallet and things out of your pocket, and ship's documents and insurance papers and things we wanted to be able to grab quickly. And then we used this as a pantry space. This cabinet is absolutely enormous and is where we kept our pantry. There are Sterlite containers that fit in here absolutely perfectly, and we will show you what you need or give you the ones that we have. 4 containers stack in here, and you can slide them in and out just like drawers. And this is just a beautiful piece of teak wood, and it has a secondary function. You flip this up, and you now have a very comfortable helm seat that's very, very sturdy, and you have a footrest, and if it gets really rough, you can brace yourself in like this and be very comfortable. This is how we crossed the Gulf, is sitting right here. So as an ex-sailboater, I like being down on the deck and not up on the flybridge. The flybridge is wonderful on a nice, beautiful day, but any other time, I really like being down here. It's very quiet, because the motor on this boat doesn't make a lot of noise. And so most of the ship's electronics and control systems are designed to be run from here. So this is obviously your throttle and gear shift. This is for the bow thruster. This is the hour meter. This is the original ship's electrical panel that also contains the 110 volt circuitry and breaker boxes for the boat. Up here, you have gauges for each of the 4 fuel tanks. We'll get into that when we look at the engine room. You have a secondary depth finder. There's a NEMA 2000 network transducer that's connected to the Garmin, and this is a backup, so you have 2 depth sounders, because on the loop, knowing your depth is extremely critical. You've got the traditional engine gauges for temperature, oil pressure, and RPM, starter and horn. This is where the chain runs through that drives the upper drive. So we have 2 VHF radios on board. That's a top-of-the-line ICOM unit right there. That's the main VHF. The secondary VHF is a Garmin unit that also contains an AIS receiver. The AIS receiver is connected to the NEMA 2000 bus, which runs to the chart plotter. What's missing here, because it's back at the house, we don't leave it on the boat, is the 12-inch head unit for the chart plotter. This is a chart plotter that would be suitable for a 50-foot boat. It's a really nice unit. It's like watching TV. And then we have a KVH digital compass, which is on a NEMA 0183 bus and feeds into the chart plotter for secondary heading and direction. So back here are some interesting things. This is for your phone, and what this allows you to do is it allows you to run CNAV or Navionics on the phone while running the chart plotter. This is for your iPad, and we ran Navionics on the iPad, CNAV on the phone, and Garmin on the chart plotter, and between the 3 of them and your eyeballs, you could figure out where you were supposed to be in the channel. This is the Benmar autopilot. This is an analog autopilot. It's very old school, but it works extremely well. It's connected to a drive unit in the flybridge cowling up on the top of the boat. And then back here, you've got 3 cigarette lighter plugs and a charging plug for the VHF. We have a standard Horizon AIS enabled VHF that plugs into that charging unit, and from this you can run a cord to the phone, you can run a cord to the iPad, you can charge both of your phones, you can charge a camera, and you can pretty much charge all the devices on the boat while you're underway. And this is connected to the secondary 12-volt bus, so you know you've got clean 12-volt power right here. On this side we have a gooseneck nav light that's both regular light and red night light. This is a Fusion MS-RA70 stereo, which is in the 2 Fusion speakers in the back. It absolutely fills the boat with sound, and it's Bluetooth capable, so you can use your iPhone to stream music to it. Over here in the corner you've got a large air conditioning duct, you've got another connection for USB charging, and you have a little Wi-Fi router right there that's a 12-volt router. That's connected to a Ubiquiti Bullet Wi-Fi extender on the outside of the boat. We were on Starlink, so we never actually used it. In all fairness, that router is not a very good router, and if you're going to live on Marina Wi-Fi, you're going to want to upgrade that router to something a little smarter. It would work, and then the next day it would forget its configuration and we'd have to reprogram it again. Down here in the corner of the galley, we have the control panel for the generator. Seamoose has a 3.5 kilowatt next-gen generator system that's in a sound enclosure. You'll see that when we look at the engine room. This switch allows you to switch the refrigerator between the inverter that's on that wall and the 110. So this would be 110, this would be off the inverter. This switch controls the engine room fan, that's the 110 volt fan, so that when you leave the boat, you can leave that little fan running and it will keep air circulating through the boat, which will keep it nice and fresh. So this is the galley area in the main salon, and it has a number of features that makes it really easy to prepare meals when you're either underway or at anchorage. First of all, we have this Magic Chef microwave, which is up and out of the way, and it does look very beefy, and I can assure you that no matter how rough the seas are, this thing is not going to come down and fall down. This is really handy for heating coffee and reheating meals and things like that. Then we have a Magic Chef propane range, and this is cutting board material. So when you're preparing the meal, you can use this as a cutting board, and then when you're done, you'll fold it up. I'll show you that in a second. This outlet over here is split 50-50. This plug is 110, and this plug goes to the inverter that runs the refrigerator. So when you're underway and you don't have the generator running, you can get 110 power here and charge your laptop or whatever you want to do if it can't work on USB. So when you fold this up, you now have room to cook on the 3-burner stove, and it has a really nice oven, and we made a lot of biscuits and gravy and bread and casseroles and all kinds of good stuff in the oven. This is another custom feature. This cutting board fits over the sink so you can cover up what's in there. This is a Ruvati 3/8 stainless steel commercial bar sink. It is big enough that Yorkshire can swim in it. It has a dry rack that goes in the bottom, and it has a faucet that extends. You can wash a tremendous number of dishes in this sink. The original factory sink was about this big. This thing is big enough and large enough, you can do an amazing amount with it. And it has a really nice strainer basket that goes with it. And when we would get up in the morning and make breakfast, we would take the dishes and put them in the sink, put that in place, out of sight, out of mind. The cook has a nice view out this window, which opens and closes. When I rebuilt the flybridge floor on Seamoose, I insulated the roof of the salon with 2-inch foam panels. So when the sun is beating down on the cabin, the ceiling in here is cool. It's a really nice feature because normally it's really hard to keep a boat this size cool. So this door covers the refrigerator. The original factory boat had a Norcold 12-volt 110 refrigerator. What I did is I replaced that with a Magic Chef. This is just a regular old Home Depot $120 refrigerator. You can buy 10 of these for what you can buy one Norcold for, and unlike the Norcold, it has a freezer, and the freezer works well enough to keep ice cream. Running this off the inverter, the drain is practically negligible. What you can also see here is where I reinforced this cabinet to hold the weight of the Ruvati sink. So this sink completely full of water is a lot of weight, and this cabinet in the front and the back has been reinforced with these birch supports and additional support alongside the sink and beside it. And then over here in the corner, you've got two double duplex GFCI outlets for your kitchen appliances, coffee maker. And then up here, you've got a really nice little pantry with built-in little cup holders and nice and padded and clean in there. So lots of kitchen storage. And even though you have this enormous sink, there's still a lot of room in here for storage. And then you've got two huge drawers down here, which you can use to store your cutlery and your knives and spatulas and all that good stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed this tour of the interior. I've probably left a lot of things out because there's been a lot of modifications and changes. If you watch episode 3 of our YouTube channel, you can see the complete restoration process of the boat, and you can see what this all looks like torn completely apart.
If you've made it this far in the video, I applaud your interest and your patience. When I went back and looked at all 3 videos, which were made at different times, I realized that there were a few places where I made a few mistakes or I said things differently. So let's clear those up now for the nitpickers. The radar is 36 mile. The keel was laid in 74 in Taiwan. It was completed in 75, and the boat was shipped through the Panama Canal and arrived on the East Coast in New Jersey in 1976, which makes it a 1976 marine trader. There are some additional new items that I failed to mention. The hot water heater was replaced in 2023 for a cost of $600. It has a Raritan Elegance head and a brand new holding tank and all new hoses, and that was done in 2021 at a cost of $2,000. It has 3 separate battery chargers. There's a battery charger for the engine start batteries, which is 2 batteries. There's a battery charger for the house bank, which is 4 batteries, and there's a battery charger for the dedicated battery that handles the windlass and the bow thruster. That gives you a lot of backup battery chargers if anything goes wrong. There's a couple of items I didn't mention. It has an Achilles LS3 dinghy, which is in fairly good condition. That is a wood floor dinghy with an inflatable keel. Engine hours. When I bought the boat, it had the original factory Motorola tachometer with an integrated engine hour meter. The tachometer was defective, and I replaced it with an aftermarket tachometer. I then bought a Sims engine hour meter and installed that at the lower station. The Motorola tachometer read 2,800 hours. After the loop, it's at about 4,000. Both people that have worked on the engine, the mechanic that adjusted the valves and checked the fuel injectors and did a compression check before I left, and then Cutter Dock, who did the heat exchanger and the intercoolers and the cables and the manifold and the water injector, all agreed that that number matches how the engine looks. So let's talk about a couple of optional extras that may or may not come with the boat, depending on what you want. I have a 5 horsepower Mercury outboard that literally has less than 1 hour of use. It was bought for the loop and the dinghy, and in fact, we only used it once. Those are about $1,500 new. I'd like to keep it, but if you want it, it's available for $1,000. The media server and the 4 terabyte hard drive is available for $200 if you want it. Another optional item that I forgot is that we have custom sheets for the V-berth and for the aft bunk, and those come with the boat. If you're going to do the loop on Sea Moose, having done the loop and owned the boat for 20 years, these are the improvements that I would make. You need to replace all of the batteries except the battery for the windlass and bow thruster. The heat down south in Florida just eats batteries alive, and the house bank got a lot of use, and while they're marginally usable, the life of the house bank when you're off the charger is very short. I'd just replace all the batteries. I did mention that the backup inverter, which is used for the fridge, died on the loop. I would replace that. If it was me, I'd put a second engine room vent on the port side aft so that the current engine room vent pulls air across the engine room. And the reason that I would do that is because it gets really hot in the engine room. And when we were down in South Florida, it got so hot that the AC transfer relay for the Freedom 1000 would fault until it cooled off a little bit. So I would do everything that I could to increase the cooling in the engine room. I have a really nice upgraded engine room fan that comes with the boat that's going to move about 10 times more air than what's currently there. And that's pretty easy to install because it fits the same size hose. If that doesn't solve the issue with the Freedom 1000 in hot weather, I would consider moving the inverters out of the engine room and up into the salon. If you're crazy about using the dinghy, I would buy a set of davits and put it on davits. I carry it on the swim step, sitting on the step and roped to the railing. It's very safe to carry it there, and we never had any issues with it. It's painful and challenging to take the dinghy off the swim step, put it in the water, climb up on the flybridge, get the outboard motor out of the garage, carry the outboard motor down, and carry the outboard motor to the dinghy. And that's why we didn't use it very often. If the dinghy was on davits with the outboard attached, or you had a Weaver snap davit system, you would use the dinghy a whole lot more. The other thing that I would do is I would add a stern anchor. The stern anchor that we had on the boat is actually for another boat that we had, Bayliner 2750. And when we sold the Bayliner 2750, the stern anchor went with that boat. So I would add a small stern anchor in the little diversion canal off the Mississippi, and several places on the 10 Tom, you really need a stern anchor to anchor safely. Other than that, put food on the boat, put in the galley stuff, and go. I know you've all been waiting. Let's talk about the price. I would like to get $45,000 for the boat without the slip and $46,000 if you want the slip. The slip cost me about $3,000, but I would love for the two of them to go together. I would consider taking items in trade. I would be interested in vehicles, a luxury car, full-size pickup, or a Jeep of equal value, a classic car. I've had several classic cars. I'm more interested in 70s cars, preferably convertibles with stick shifts. I would consider a late 30s classic car, depending on what it was. Interested in property because we bought a motorhome. So an RV site in the south that had full hookups that we could use in the winter would be something I'd be willing to trade for. Or land in northern Michigan in the Upper Peninsula that I could either get electric or has currently electric. And if you're in southeast Michigan and you happen to be a contractor, we could trade work on my house. So I hope you've enjoyed this excruciatingly long video. And here's how you can get a hold of me. If you call me on the phone, leave a message. I get a lot of junk mail. And in summary, it pains me to get rid of this boat. It's many years of my life and hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I'm kind of done with it. And I'd like to start my new journey in a motorhome. Uh, I want whoever buys the boat needs to be the right person that's going to take care of it and not let it sit in a marina and rot. Thank you so much for watching.